The sun was burning hot above the dry Afghan valley. Dust floated in the air like smoke. The SEAL team had lost 3 men in the last 2 days. No one knew where the enemy was hiding. They just knew this every time they moved. Someone fell, sniper. The radio crackled. Then silence, another soldier gone. And no one saw the bullet coming. The SEALs were the best, but now, even they were afraid to breathe too loud. They whispered when they spoke. "Those snipers can't be stopped," one man said, hiding behind a rock. "They see everything, hear everything," another added, wiping sweat from his face. The team commander called for backup. They needed a specialist. They needed a ghost, someone better than the enemy. Someone who could see without being seen. 2 hours later, a helicopter landed quietly on the ridge. Out stepped a small figure, boots hitting the ground without a sound. She wore standard gear, carried a long sniper rifle in a soft case. She looked like a rookie. The SEALs stared. One of them squinted and asked, "She's the sniper?" "She's just a girl," someone whispered. Loud enough for her to hear. Her name was Sergeant Eliza Ray. She didn't answer the stares or the whispers. She just looked around the valley slowly, like she was smelling the air. Then she knelt down, touched the ground, and closed her eyes. The team commander, a rough man named Briggs, nodded at her. "You've got 15 minutes, he said. Eliza didn't look at him, she whispered. 12 will be enough. The team wasn't impressed. They had seen legends fall here. 3 snipers, maybe more, hiding somewhere in the rocks. Every time they tried to move, someone got shot. Now this quiet woman was supposed to fix it. No one believed she could. "Watch her fail," one of the younger SEALs muttered to his buddy. Eliza opened her rifle case and pulled out the long weapon. It was worn but clean. Custom modifications, homemade scope. No fancy tech, just pure control. She lay down flat, belly on the ground, eyes scanning without a scope. The sun reflected on her cheek, but she didn't blink. She listened, her breath slowed, her heart rate dropped. She became still, like a statue. Briggs asked her, "You want coordinates?" "Last known positions." She shook her head gently. "They've moved," she said. "There are 3 of them. 2 on the left ridge, 1 far east." The team looked at each other, shocked. How could she know that? No one had seen anything. She hadn't even looked through binoculars. "I can feel them," she said softly. Like a heartbeat in the rocks, the men thought she was crazy. One even laughed quietly. But then, a single shot echoed through the air. The sound of death. A bullet hit the metal beside them, inches from a soldier's head. Eliza didn't flinch, she didn't move, she simply adjusted her body 1 inch to the left. Her hand slid along the rifle slowly like water flowing. She whispered, "Found you?" She pulled the trigger. 1 sharp, clean shot, silence. Then a thud in the distance, the radio crackled. "1 down." The SEALs froze. Briggs looked through his own binoculars. The body was there, one of the enemy snipers down, clean hit between the eyes. The young SEAL who laughed earlier stopped breathing. "That wasn't luck," he said. Eliza moved again, crawling 2 feet to the right. Still silent, still calm, she breathed once. Held it, fired again, another silence. Then the radio again, 2 down, now. The SEALs weren't whispering anymore, they were staring, eyes wide, mouths open. Briggs took off his helmet. He had seen many things in war. But never this, not like this. Eliza stayed low. The 3rd sniper was still out there, and he was moving now, trying to escape. She didn't chase. She waited. The game had just begun, long before the valley, before the rifles and before the war. Eliza Ray was just a quiet girl who never liked loud places. She didn't laugh loudly like the other kids. She didn't join games or talk much in school. But she watched, she listened, she learned how people moved, how they blinked, how they lied. She lived in a small town where soldiers were heroes. Her father was one. Her 3 brothers followed him into the military. People expected Eliza to become a nurse, a teacher, maybe a cook. But she had different dreams. Dreams she never told anyone, not even her family. Her father had an old rifle in the attic. He told her never to touch it. She touched it anyway. Not to shoot, but to feel its weight. She would lie on her stomach for hours, pretending to aim, not at people, but leaves, at ants, at stars in the sky. She whispered to herself, "Hold your breath. Slow your heart." When she turned 16, something changed. Her oldest brother came home injured from war. He had been shot by a sniper, clean hit, shoulder to spine. She sat beside him in silence for days, and something grew inside her. Not anger, not revenge, something colder, deeper, a need to understand how does someone hide in daylight, how does someone shoot without being seen. She wanted to learn, not to kill, but to never be helpless again. One night, she found an old man at the edge of town. He was a retired marksman named Micah. People said he used to shoot out tires from helicopters. He lived alone, didn't talk to anyone. Eliza walked to his cabin and knocked. He didn't open the door, so she sat on his porch every day for 2 weeks. Rain or sun, morning or night, saying nothing. On the 15th day, he opened the door and asked, "Why are you here?" She replied, "Teach me." He stared at her for a full minute, then nodded once. That was the beginning. Micah didn't believe in fancy gear. He gave her a wooden rifle with no bullets. He told her, "If you can't shoot with your mind, you'll miss even with gold in your hands." He trained her in silence. She learned to shoot without firing, to listen without looking, to breathe once in a minute, to lie in one spot for 5 hours without blinking. He taught her things no school ever could: how to smell metal, how to count the seconds between wind gusts, how to spot fear in a bird's flight. She became more than sharp. She became invisible. By 18, she could shoot a paper target between 2 trees, from 900 meters. At night, in the rain, blindfolded, but no one knew. She never entered competitions, never posted videos, never told her friends. She trained in shadows. Micah once asked her, "Why do you want this?" She said softly, "Because no one will see me coming." Micah nodded, then gave her a single bullet. "This is your first real shot. You'll know when to use it." She kept it in her boot for years. At 19, she joined the army. She didn't stand out. She passed basic training quietly. No one noticed her much. She got average marks in most classes, on purpose. But when it came to rifle tests, she always hit the center, always. She got invited to sniper school. She refused the first 3 times, not because she wasn't ready, because she didn't want eyes on her. Finally, she agreed, but only on one condition. No cameras, no interviews, no records. They thought it was a joke. But her results spoke louder than any video could. She didn't just pass, she broke quiet records, shot targets others couldn't even see, and then she vanished into assignments. Low profile, shadow jobs, backup roles. She didn't care, she didn't want medals. She wanted silence until that valley came, until those snipers dared to take soldiers down like ghosts, until someone said, "There's no one who can stop them." That's when someone whispered her name. And she came, not as a hero, not as a savior, but as the answer no one remembered training. Eliza Ray lay flat on the dry earth, her cheek pressed against the ground. The dirt was hot, the sun above sharp and blinding. But she didn't blink. She didn't even move her lips. The SEALs crouched nearby behind large rocks. Sweating, breathing heavy, they were trained for war. But this was something else. It felt like a trap wrapped in silence. No one could see where the bullets came from. The enemy had become invisible. But Eliza was calmer than anyone. She closed her eyes. Her fingertips touched the dirt slowly, softly, and then she whispered, almost too soft to hear, "They're still here, Briggs." The team commander leaned in. "Coordinates?" he asked, voice low. She didn't answer right away. She took another slow breath, then said, 3 snipers." She pointed gently without lifting her hand. "1 on that ridge. 2 more spread northeast and maybe 600 meters apart." The SEALs looked at each other, confused. "How do you know?" One of them asked. She didn't open her eyes. "I can hear their heartbeats," she said. They thought she was joking. Some of them smirked, others shook their heads. But Briggs didn't laugh. He watched her, saw something in her face. Stillness, not fear, not focus. A kind of silence that didn't belong to normal people. The wind blew, carrying dust far away. A small sound echoed, just a pebble sliding down a rock. Eliza's eyes snapped open. Her hand moved slowly to her rifle. She adjusted the scope without looking through it yet. Her body stayed completely still, only her fingers moved. "They're watching us," she said quietly. "One of them is ready to fire." The SEALs ducked, checking their gear, their ears strained for any noise. But they heard nothing. Then, crack, a bullet flew past, grazing the edge of a radio unit. It missed by inches if Eliza hadn't warned them. One of them would be dead. She didn't panic. She didn't even flinch. She whispered, "That was his warning shot." And then she turned her scope toward the far ridge. Without blinking, she said, "Time to say goodnight." She pressed the trigger gently. The rifle didn't shout him, it breathed. The shot flew through wind, across heat waves over dirt and stone. Seconds later, in silence, then a soft thud in the distance. One sniper and gone, no cheers, no celebration. Just stunned faces. Briggs checked his tablet. The mark was down. Confirmed, he said. Eliza had already moved, not far. Just a small shift in position. Next one is smarter, she whispered. He changed position after I fired? How do you know? One SEAL asked again. She simply replied. The wind pattern changed. They stared at her. Not understanding, but they no longer questioned her. She lay down again, even flatter this time, eyes soft, breath slower than ever. Then she reached into her pouch and took out a tiny piece of mirror. She held it low and tilted it just right. Not to see the sniper, but to see how the birds were flying near the rocks, their wings stuttered near one point. That was enough for her. She adjusted her scope, lifted her heel an inch, and exhaled slowly. Then another quiet trigger pull. The sound was soft but deadly. The bullet flew like it had memory. It knew where to go 30 seconds later. A second body dropped, 2 down. Briggs looked at her again. She's doing in minutes what we couldn't do in 2 days, he whispered. But Eliza didn't celebrate. Her face changed slightly now. Not worrying, but something sharper, she said. The last one knows I'm here. The SEALs turned tense again. How? Briggs asked. He moved the way I would, she said. Firing position to a blind spot, staying low, keeping distance from reflective surfaces. She sat up slowly now. Still half-crouched, still quiet, but this time her eyes were open wide, watching everything, the sun, the wind, the shadows. He's not just hiding, she said, he's hunting. That moment hit different. Because the team realized the final sniper wasn't just defending, he was a killer, and now he knew she was coming for him. Eliza stood slowly. Dust falling from her uniform. She didn't run. She didn't rush. She simply said, let the game begin. The desert wind picked up again. It blew across sharp rocks and scattered dust across the soldiers' boots, but no one moved. Not the SEALs. Not the girl with the rifle. They were watching her now. Not with doubt, but with something new, something close to respect. Eliza Ray lay in the dirt, flat like a shadow. She had already taken out 2 enemy snipers in complete silence. Each shot had landed with perfect precision. No echo, no second try. Just a soft breath and a body hitting the ground far away. The SEALs were trained to survive under fire, but this and what she had just done felt unreal. One of the younger soldiers whispered to the man next to him. That wasn't luck. The man nodded slowly, still watching her. No, he replied. That was something else, but Eliza wasn't done. Not yet. She said nothing, just slowly moved her body 3 inches forward, her hands steady, her eyes scanning shadows that didn't move. The third sniper was still out there. The most dangerous one, this one had moved. He had noticed her shots, and he wasn't staying still. He was smart, maybe even better than the others. He had stopped firing, now he was watching. Hunting her, Eliza felt it. Not in her eyes, but in her skin, her bones. Something deep inside her spine tingled. She whispered, he's circling wide, Briggs. The team commander leaned in. You sure? She nodded slowly. He's using the creek bed. Moving low between the rocks, the others looked around, but they saw nothing. No footprints, no movement, just a quiet stretch of land that looked empty. But Eliza trusted her instincts. She had trained for this. Listened to wind, studied bird patterns, watched how ants reacted to footsteps. And right now the birds had vanished. Not flown, vanished. Even the air felt heavier. He's watching us, she whispered. He wants me to shoot first. She didn't. She stayed perfectly still, her hands resting beside her weapon. Not moving, not aiming, not even breathing hard. The SEALs waited behind cover, unsure whether to speak. They had never seen anyone so still, so focused, like a statue carved into the dirt. Then it happened. The sun shifted slightly, and for half a second, a tiny reflection flickered on the far ridge, almost invisible, but not to her. Eliza's eyes snapped to it. It wasn't from a rifle. It was from the corner of a scope. The third sniper had made his first mistake, she whispered. Got you, but still didn't shoot. Instead, she adjusted her body again, barely a movement. She didn't aim at the reflection. She aimed where he would move next. She knew his mind. He would shift to the left after realizing the light had given him away. Seconds ticked like hours, then a leaf fluttered. Just one. Her finger squeezed. Cracked silence. Not even a bird moved. Then, A far-off low sound. Like cloth hitting stone, the third sniper had fallen. Not from panic, not from mistake, but from her patience, her timing, her mind. Briggs confirmed it with his scope. "Clean hit," he said quietly. The rest of the team stayed silent. Some looked at her with awe, others with disbelief. But no one spoke. She sat up slowly, wiped the dust from her hands. Her voice was soft. 12 minutes, she said. No pride, no emotion, just fact. Briggs looked at his watch. It was true. 12 minutes from her first shot to the last. The man who earlier whispered, "She's just a girl," now stared at her like she was made of stone and shadow. He stepped closer, then said softly, "I've never seen anything like that." She didn't reply. She just stood and looked out across the silent valley. It was safe now. The ghosts were gone, but inside her, something stayed alert because she knew. This wasn't the end. Only a test. She picked up her rifle, slid it gently into the case, and walked past them without a word behind her. One of the SEALs said what they all were thinking. She didn't win a fight. She ended it. The valley was quiet now, but it wasn't peace. It was pause. Like the air had stopped to listen. Like the earth was holding its breath. Eliza Ray stood beside the SEALs, her rifle slung across her back. The 3 enemy snipers were downing, but something felt off. Too clean, too easy. Briggs noticed it too. He checked the satellite feed again. One figure had vanished from the thermal scans, gone like a ghost in daylight. "There was a 4th, Eliza said softly. Not a question, a fact. Briggs turned to her, surprised. "How do you know?" She glanced toward the eastern ridge. "The last sniper was too exposed, too sloppy," she said. "Like he was trying to hold our attention." The SEALs shifted uncomfortably. No one liked the idea of a 4th sniper, one they hadn't seen, especially one smart enough to hide from all their tech. Eliza reached down, picked up a small stone. She tossed it lightly, watching how the wind carried it. "He's already moving," she said. "Farther east, toward the dried riverbed." The SEALs looked confused. No one saw anything, just cracked land and rock shadows. But Eliza knew. This wasn't just any sniper. This one was the ghost of Kabul. Stories about him were passed between special forces like whispered warnings. A man with no face, no records, only results, missing teams. Silent kills and never caught, never seen. Now he had seen her now. He knew she was coming. Eliza didn't run. She walked slow and steady, her boots crunching softly over dried mud and broken stone. She didn't speak. She didn't turn. The SEALs didn't follow. They just watched. She was entering enemy territory alone. But she didn't feel fear. She felt something else. Clarity. Like everything was sharper. Like time had slowed. The ghost was already adjusting. He had seen her shots. He knew her rhythm now. He wouldn't wait in one spot like the others. He would move. He would lead her deeper. Away from support. Away from help. But that's exactly what she wanted. Eliza paused near a broken wall. She knelt, placed her palm flat on the ground. The heat pattern was old. No one had been here in hours. She closed her eyes, then she heard it, a distant shift. Just one small rock rolling down the slope behind the dried river. Not enough for a normal person to notice, but enough for her. She stood up, adjusted her gear, and smiled, just slightly. "He's testing me," she whispered. "Good." The sun began to dip lower, the shadows stretched longer. This was his game now. He wanted to draw her out, use her own instincts against her, but he didn't know. Eliza had trained in silence longer than he had hunted in it. She didn't chase him, she cut him off. She didn't follow his trail. She read his mind. She moved southeast, not east, climbing a small ridge no one would think to use, her body low, balanced, breathing slow. The ridge gave her view over the dried trench where he had just been. She saw nothing, but she felt it. A bird lifted too suddenly from a tree below. A lizard stopped crawling mid-step. Nature had gone quiet again. "Too quiet," she whispered. "He's watching me, and for the first time in years." So was he, the ghost, hidden behind a pile of jagged rocks. Had his eye on the girl in the dust. He knew who she was now. He had heard of the silent shooter, the girl who trained in the dark and never missed. He smiled beneath his scarf. She came alone, he thought. Foolish. He raised his rifle, a slow breath. He adjusted the wind dial, finger ready. He saw her standing just beyond the boulder, in his sights. He fired, but Eliza was already gone. She had never stopped moving. The image he aimed at was a shadow she had left behind. She slid behind a curve in the rock, landed flat. Her rifle was already in position. She didn't look at where he had been. She aimed where he would run, and then she waited. Breath, stillness. Silence, time slowed, the wind stilled. The sun dropped just enough to cast golden shadows across the broken land. The whole valley felt like it was holding its breath. Eliza Ray lay flat behind a curved boulder, her cheek pressed to the warm rifle stock. She didn't move, not even a twitch. Her heart was steady. Her finger rested gently on the trigger. She wasn't aiming at a sound. She wasn't aiming at movement. She was aiming at intention. The ghost of Kabul had missed his shot. That almost never happened. Now he was moving, quick, low, changing ground. He knew she was alive. He knew she was close, and now, for the first time in his long, cold career, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Pressure. He ducked behind a jagged ridge, switched positions, kept low. He had never been hunted before, not like this. He had always been the shadow. But now the air itself felt heavy, like it was watching him. Whispering her name, he paused, lifted his scope slowly. Carefully scanned the rocks, nothing, no reflection, no movement, no birds, just silence. Too perfect, and then, for a single moment, a sparkle far ahead behind a pile of rubble. Something caught his eye. He smiled beneath his scarf. You made a mistake, he thought. He raised his rifle again, lined it up, prepared to fire. But before his finger could squeeze, he felt it, not pain, not fear, something else. A pull, like someone was already watching him. Not his face, his eyes. He turned just slightly. And there she was, not far, at maybe 300 meters, lying on her side, rifle ready. Aimed directly at him, her expression calm. Her body still, but her eyes, they were locked onto his. No scope, no panic, just truth. She had known where he'd go. Not because of math, not because of tech. Because she knew him, how he thought, how he hid. How he hunted. Now he was the prey. For the first time in years, the ghost of Kabul froze. Not because he feared death, but because of what he saw in her eyes. She wasn't angry, she wasn't proud. She was just present, like the wind, like time, like death itself. She didn't blink. He did, she breathed once. He held his, and in that perfect still second, he accepted it. He nodded, a slow, tired nod. Like a master handing the torch to a student who had surpassed him. Then he smiled, not in defeat, but in respect, and then she fired. No sound echoed, no bird flew, no dust rose. The bullet cut the air like silk. It moved with purpose, straight to its mark. The ghost of Kabul dropped his rifle before he dropped to his knees. He never felt the ground. His body lay still, face turned slightly toward her. Eyes open, still looking. Eliza held her position. Didn't move for 30 more seconds. She scanned. No backup snipers, no second ghost. Just the silence returning to the valley. A silence she had created. She stood slowly, her body stiff but balanced, the rifle now resting across her shoulder. She took one final look at the man she had just defeated and whispered, "Thank you, not for dying, but for understanding." Then she turned and walked back. Every step quiet, every breath calm. The SEALs watched her return, eyes wide. Some looked at the horizon where the final shot had been taken. Others just looked at her. Briggs stepped forward but didn't speak. He didn't need to. Eliza nodded once. Tired but whole, 12 minutes, 4 snipers, and one silent promise kept. She didn't tell them what happened in those final seconds. She didn't have to. They had seen the result. But only she had seen his eyes, and only he had seen hers. Eliza Ray walked back slowly, her boots pressed into the dry dirt without a sound. Her rifle hung across her back like a shadow. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes told the truth. She was finished. The wind had calmed, the sun had lowered behind the hills, and the SEALs stood frozen in place. No one called out, no one asked questions. They had heard the final shot. They had seen the silence return. Briggs was the first to take a step forward. He didn't salute, he didn't smile. He just stood in front of her and nodded. A soldier's way of saying what words couldn't. She gave a slight nod in return, then walked past him and set her rifle case gently on the ground. She sat on a rock, pulled out a water bottle, took one sip, then stared at the horizon. Behind her, the SEALs remained quiet. Some looked toward the ridge where the last sniper had fallen. Others looked at Eliza, like they were seeing a story come to life. One of them finally whispered, 12 minutes. Another answered softly, 4 snipers, and then no casualties. Still, no one spoke louder than a breath. It was not the kind of silence that demanded fear. It was the kind that demanded respect. They had all trained for war. They had all faced fire. But what they had witnessed wasn't just a mission. It was something else, something clean, precise, unshakable. Briggs walked to the edge of the overlook and raised his radio. "Area clear," he said. "Targets eliminated," he paused, then added. "No further action needed," the command base responded. "Understood. Reinforcement not required. Back at camp." The news spread quietly. No one celebrated. There were no high fives, no cheering, just silence. A respectful kind of silence because they knew. Someone had ended what they couldn't. Without asking for help, without asking for credit, an hour later, a Black Hawk arrived for extraction. The SEALs packed up quickly, but Eliza moved slowly, not because she was tired, but because she was thinking. She looked one last time toward the valley, the place where ghosts had once ruled, where fear had built a nest in the hearts of the brave, now quiet, now still. She climbed aboard the helicopter, sat near the window. Didn't speak, didn't look back as the blades lifted them into the air. Briggs sat across from her. He watched her for a long moment, then finally asked, "Where did you learn that?" Eliza didn't answer right away. She turned her head toward the window and said, "From silence, that was all." The rest of the flight was quiet. No one wanted to break it. At the base, when they landed, there were officers waiting, curious faces, papers in their hands, cameras nearby, hoping to catch something worthy of a report. But Eliza stepped off the helicopter and walked straight past them. No salutes, no speeches, just the soft sound of her boots fading behind her. One of the officers asked Briggs, "Who was that?" Briggs gave a small smile and replied, "She's the one who ended it." That night, back in her bunk, Eliza opened her locker. Inside was a small metal box. She opened it. Inside was a single bullet, the one Micah had given her. The one he said she'd know when to use. She held it in her hand, then looked out the small window beside her bed. The stars blinked silently above. Like quiet witnesses to everything she had done, she whispered, "Not yet," and placed the bullet gently back inside the box. Somewhere across the world, files were updated. Reports were written, names were listed, but hers never appeared. She asked for no medal, no interview. She didn't care if anyone remembered her name, because what mattered wasn't the mission. It wasn't the number of kills. It was the silence she gave back to the men who needed it. The peace she restored in the middle of fear, and that no report could measure, no camera could capture. Only the ones who stood beside her knew, and they never spoke of it loudly. They simply whispered it, like a secret carried by wind. She ended it in 12 minutes. Far from the battlefield, far from the desert heat and the ringing silence of war, Eliza Ray lived in a quiet town tucked between mountains and pine trees. No one knew who she was, and she preferred it that way. She worked at a small shooting range on the edge of town, the kind with wooden signs, old tin targets, and the smell of coffee always in the air. She taught children how to hold a rifle properly, how to breathe before aiming, how to respect silence more than noise. The locals called her Miss Eliza. They knew her as calm, gentle, and quiet. They said she had the kind of eyes that noticed everything but judged nothing. She lived in a simple cabin with a porch that faced the woods. No trophies on the wall, no pictures in uniform, just books, plants, and an old record player that played soft jazz at night. Some of the townspeople found her odd, too quiet, too still. But the kids loved her because she listened when they spoke, and never interrupted, not even once at night. When the moon hung low and the wind brushed the trees, she'd sit outside with tea in hand, watching the stars like old friends. She never bragged, never told stories, but sometimes, in rare moments, someone would ask, "Were you in the military?" She'd pause, then smile gently and say, "Only for a little while." They never pushed, because something in her voice made them stop. Like trying to open a book with no title. You could tell the pages mattered, but it wasn't meant to be read out loud. At the shooting range, one teenage boy once asked her, "Did you ever kill anyone?" His friends froze, waiting for her to get angry or walk away. But she didn't. She set the rifle down gently, looked him in the eye and said, "Guns are not for killing. They're for ending the noise." The boy didn't understand. Not then, but years later he would, back at a distant military base. Briggs still told the story sometimes, not in briefings, not in reports, but around campfires to the young ones who thought war was glory. He would lean forward, lower his voice, and say, "There was a mission where we lost good men, snipers, invisible, untouchable, and then she came." He never said her name. Not because he forgot, but because legends don't need names to live on. He'd end the story the same way every time. 12 minutes, 4 shots, and silence returned, and then he'd go quiet. Because that's what she left behind, silence, not the kind that scares you. The kind that lets you breathe again. One day, a reporter came through Eliza's town looking for the girl sniper. He'd followed whispers, unofficial reports, a trail of respect with no photos. He found her fixing a wooden fence behind the range. Wearing a worn flannel shirt and dusty boots, he introduced himself. Asked for 5 minutes, she looked at him, then said gently, "No interviews, no stories," and went back to hammering the nail. He didn't argue because in that moment he understood. Some stories aren't meant for headlines. Years passed, people came and went, but Eliza remained, steady, rooted, teaching the next generation how to hold breath before a shot, how to listen to wind, how to walk away without needing applause. One summer afternoon, a girl asked her, "Miss Eliza, what makes a great shooter?" Eliza smiled softly. "Someone who knows when not to shoot," and that was all. No medals, no news articles, no memorials, but every now and then, a soldier would visit the range, stand in silence, and place a coin on the shooting bench, a symbol. Then walk away. They never said why, but Eliza always nodded in return. She understood, and they did too. Because legends don't echo, they whisper, like the wind through the trees, like the hush before the shot, like the silence that follows when the danger is gone. And somewhere deep in a small wooden box beneath her bed, a single bullet still waits, untouched, shining softly. Because Eliza Ray never used it, she didn't need it. She had already ended the war that mattered, without needing anyone to remember except the silence, which always did.